You think this guy belongs in the VIP line? Look at him, probably here to mop the floor. The chuckle that followed wasn't subtle. It carried across the security lane, picked up by a few others in tailored suits and polished shoes. Halden didn't flinch. He just rested a hand on his daughter's shoulder and guided her toward the scanner, ignoring the sneer curling across the TSA agent's face. Then the scanner lit up red, loud, instant, alarming. The Mach-1 paused, security moved in, and the shuttle driver they'd just dismissed didn't even blink. By the way, where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments below, because before this is over, you're going to witness a 4-star general run across an airport to salute a man everyone else mocked. They thought this was just a man cutting a line. They had no idea they were about to learn what real service looks like. He didn't need to defend himself. He'd already done enough for people like them. The man they ignored used to keep airports like this from burning. Hey, he murmured gently. Remember our breathing trick? Leah's small hand tightened around his fingers. Her eyes were wide, jaw trembling as she tried to nod. Too much noise, too many people, too many memories pressing in. The terminal was buzzing. Families, screens, loudspeakers. Flight announcements were firing off like distant gunshots. To her, it all sounded like the day the medevac went down. He bent so his face was level with hers. Look at me, sweetheart, in and out. She followed his slow breath, one after another. Her chest loosened just slightly. Her grip stayed firm. She was trying. He looked ahead. They were barely halfway through the terminal, and Flight 247 to Denver was already boarding. Gate D4 had changed last minute. Now it was across the entire concourse. The normal security line stretched into a mass of shuffling chaos. Families with strollers. Businessmen checking their watches. TSA agents repeating the same instructions over and over. There was no way she'd make it through that line in time without spiraling. Halden scanned the terminal with muscle memory, not panic. Years ago, he'd surveyed foreign airstrips like this, scanning for sniper nests, calculating perimeter weaknesses, tracing fallback exits. Today, he was scanning for mercy. His eyes locked on the side corridor, authorized/VIP personnel only. It was closer to the gate. It was emptier. It was doable. He didn't hesitate. Her hand still in his, he adjusted course and walked straight toward the velvet-roped shortcut. Technically, his driver badge had limited access privileges, mostly to restricted pickup bays and underground staff routes. But if he kept his head down and moved confidently, sometimes it was enough. They were 2 steps from the scanner when the voice snapped like a whip. "Sir, stop right there." He turned. The agent's suit was crisp, his posture military proud, but the disdain on his face was plain. Marcus Velen didn't even look at the badge. He looked at the boots, the faded polo, the shuttle tag. "She's not crew," Velen said, gesturing to Leah. "This entrance isn't for custodial staff and their +1s. Halden met his eyes, even in calm. "She's my daughter. Her flight's closing now. She has a hard time in crowds." Velen didn't blink. "So does everyone. Doesn't mean we skip the rules." A woman in heels smirked behind him. Someone whispered, "Cheap stunt," under their breath. The energy shifted. Suddenly, Halden wasn't a father trying to protect his child. He was an obstacle to the efficient world these people thought they owned. Leah's breath hitched again. Her nails dug into his hand. "I'm going through," he said. Not loud, not angry, just decided. Velen stepped forward. "Badge." Halden offered it. The agent looked it over, lips pursed, pretending to read it, then waved another officer over. "This guy thinks his shuttle pass makes him above the rules. Let's give him the full screening, huh?" They grabbed a bin. "Shoes off, belt too, empty your pockets." Halden stayed silent. He didn't argue, just moved through the motions, unhooking his belt slowly, never taking his eyes off Leah. She was holding in tears now. She hadn't had a panic attack in weeks, but it was curling behind her eyes like smoke. He stepped into the scanner. The machine flared red and beeped hard. A metallic ping echoed from the console. The second agent blinked. "That's weird." "Step out," Velen barked. Halden did. "What do you have in your waistband?" the agent asked. "Nothing," Velen scoffed. "What's in your body then? You got something implanted?" Halden didn't answer. He just glanced once at his daughter and waited. The silence after the beep felt heavier than the sound itself. Even the conveyor belt seemed to pause as Velen narrowed his eyes, stepping closer. "I asked you a question. What's in your body?" Halden didn't blink. "Nothing commercial." That answer only made things worse. "Oh, we've got a smart one," Velen said, signaling another guard. "Run a secondary, full scan, and keep the kid outside the line." Leah stiffened. "Wait, she stays with me," Halden said, still calm, still level. "She doesn't clear protocol. She's 9 years old." "Exactly." The crowd wasn't watching quietly anymore. A few phones had come out. Most weren't recording, yet. But the spectacle had turned heads. A man in work boots getting grilled while trying to keep his daughter close. It made for good background noise. Velen leaned closer, his voice low enough for only Halden to hear. "You think you're special because you drive a shuttle and can walk in straight lines? Wrong place, wrong lane, wrong attitude." Halden didn't react. Not to the sneer, not to the threat. Instead, he took one slow step back, placing himself directly between Velen and Leah. She stood behind him, clutching the corner of his uniform like a lifeline. "Sir," the second agent called, glancing at the portable scanner's results. "There's definitely something. Left hip. Deep." "What kind of implant?" Velen asked. "Unknown. Not a med device. Not dental. Too small for a pacemaker. Could be military." Velen's eyes narrowed. That was the moment Halden saw it. The flicker of doubt. Not respect. Not recognition. Just the uneasy pause of someone who realized they might have stepped too far without knowing where the line was drawn. Halden said nothing. His silence did more than a denial ever could. Velen tried to recover. "Military, huh? Stolen valor's still a federal offense." Leah's voice was small. "He didn't steal anything." The agent turned toward her. "Leah," Halden said softly, "it's okay." But she wasn't looking at him. She was looking into her backpack. From it, she pulled a worn metal tag on a faded chain, one she carried every time they went to an airport. It wasn't Halden's. It had belonged to her mother, Lieutenant Ava Brock, flight nurse, medevac corps, lost in the Black Ridge fire rescue 2 years ago. The crowd didn't see that detail. But one woman near the front, a mother maybe, whispered, "She's carrying a dog tag." Halden didn't move. "Ma'am," the second agent said nervously to Velen, "we might want to run this through DHS before we detain anyone, just in case." But Velen wasn't backing down. His pride had been challenged in front of his team, and the badge on his chest was starting to mean less than the glare in his eyes. "No," he snapped. "Nobody skips our protocol, especially not liars with mystery metal and sob stories." Halden glanced sideways at the security monitors mounted in the corner of the terminal ceiling, and then he said it, Better call command. If I'm who you're implying I am, you're going to want witnesses. It was barely above a whisper, but the nearby officers heard it. The ones who'd been standing back with folded arms straightened. The word command hit differently. It wasn't just rank. It meant classified. It meant flags. It meant liability. Velen didn't flinch. Get the supervisor down here and keep your hands where we can see them. Leah looked up at her father, confused but trusting. He gave her a small nod. Behind the checkpoint, the boarding gate flickered to final call. She wouldn't make it. Halden knew it, and he let that fact settle. She wouldn't make it through that gate, not before something gave, and something was about to. 30 yards away, inside the high-security lounge overlooking the checkpoint, General Corbin Rice adjusted his cuff and glanced at the alert now pinging silently on the device tucked inside his sleeve. It wasn't a threat alert. It was an identity flag. An encrypted, biometric signature had been tripped by the checkpoint scanner. One tagged as inactive, no public record, retired clearance. He stood slowly. "Sir?" his aide asked. Rice didn't answer. He was already walking. As he neared the glass, his eyes found the man at the center of the tension. Uniform scuffed, standing protectively over a child, facing down a row of TSA agents. The general's breath caught. He knew that posture, that frame, that stillness under pressure. And more than that, he remembered the man's name etched on a black wall of heroes back at Langley, the ones who never took credit for saving lives no one knew were at risk. "Colonel Halden Brooke," he whispered. Then he moved. The general didn't call for backup. He didn't check protocol. He just moved. Out of the private lounge, past startled aides, through the security doors, and into the open terminal. He didn't break stride, not when 2 uniformed personnel at the gate called after him, not when a nearby agent reached to block his path and stopped the moment he caught the flash of stars on the general's collar. Rice descended the terminal ramp like a man following coordinates. His jaw locked. His eyes didn't blink. 30 years of battlefield conditioning had taught him how to assess a scene in 2 seconds flat. And in this one, everything pointed to the same conclusion. A man of service was being humiliated. And no one around him understood why that was a mistake. Back at the checkpoint, Velen's voice cut through the din. "You want to play cryptic games? Fine, but I've had enough silence. You either tell us what's in your body, or we bring in a field scan. Your call." Halden didn't respond. His eyes were on Leah now, her breathing shallow, fingers twisting the dog tag around her wrist like a rosary. She'd missed her boarding call. Her face said she already knew it. "I'm not resisting," he said. "You don't need to escalate." "Oh, I'm not escalating," Velen replied, smirking. "I'm just doing my job. Some of us still believe in keeping people safe." He said it loud enough for the surrounding passengers to hear. A few nodded. A woman in business attire pulled her son a little closer. The quiet murmurs of judgment began swirling through the air again, just like before. That's when the ripple started. A voice, low but sharp, cut through the terminal. "Stand down!" Velen turned, ready to fire off a dismissal. But his words evaporated when he saw the figure stepping through the barrier. General Corbin Rice didn't wear a name tag. He didn't have to. His rank shimmered in gold at his shoulders, and his eyes, hard as carved granite, told every agent within earshot that this moment had just shifted out of their jurisdiction. "Sir, this is a secure lane," one of the younger officers stammered. "I'm aware," Rice said, without looking at him. He stopped directly in front of Halden. A beat of silence passed between them. Rice's eyes swept over the man, his posture, his breath control, the way he instinctively positioned himself between the child and the perceived threat. It had been years, but men like this didn't change. Then, without hesitation, without a word, General Rice stood to full attention and saluted. The terminal fell silent. Velin's expression fractured. Halden returned the salute, not theatrically, not for the crowd, but with the quiet sharpness of a man who hadn't forgotten how. The moment stretched. Then the general spoke. "This man," Rice said to no one and everyone, "once led a classified containment mission at Jurien Ridge, saved over 400 lives. That implant your scanner flagged? It's a residual fragment from the internal AI shrapnel he took in the field. He kept it because removal was riskier than leaving it. You questioned him because he doesn't wear stars." Velin's lips parted. No words came out. Rice turned, slowly to him. "What's your name, officer?" "TSA Chief Marcus Velin, sir." "Well, Chief Velin," the general said, voice tightening, "you just detained a decorated officer under suspicion of, what exactly? Improvised heroism? Fatherhood under pressure?" "I wasn't aware." "No, you weren't. That's the problem." Behind them, more phones were recording now. The crowd wasn't murmuring anymore. They were watching. The general turned back to Halden, softer now. "Didn't think I'd ever see you outside Black Ops again." Halden gave a half smile. "Didn't think you'd be on my daughter's departure path either." Rice looked at Leah. His face shifted. "You must be Leah," he said gently. "Your father is one of the reasons I still have mine." Leah blinked. She glanced at Halden, then at the general. "Really?" Rice nodded. "Really?" Then he turned back to the checkpoint. "Get her on that flight," he said to the stunned agents. "You'll delay it if you have to. If anyone complains, I'll be the one they talk to." Velin swallowed hard. "Understood." The general gave one last nod, then disappeared back toward the restricted corridor, leaving behind silence, embarrassment, and awe. Halden reached down, brushing Leah's cheek. "You okay?" She nodded slowly. "You didn't tell me you were a colonel. You needed a dad more." She squeezed his hand. The crowd parted as they walked toward the gate. No more jokes, no more smug comments, just the quiet shame of people who realized they'd watched the wrong man. Leah clutched his hand the entire walk to the gate. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her silence said more than panic ever could. This time, it wasn't fear that held her tongue. It was awe. The agents at the terminal's far end scrambled to open the final boarding door. Their urgency wasn't for the airline's sake. It was for the general's. Word traveled fast, in places like this, and nobody wanted to be the next person who underestimated the man in scuffed boots and a faded shuttle uniform. A gate attendant with a headset rushed forward. "She's cleared to board, sir. We'll walk her down." Halden nodded, but didn't release his grip on Leah just yet. He crouched beside her, leveling his eyes with hers. "You know what to do when you get nervous?" She nodded. "Breathe. Look for light." He smiled. That was something Ava used to say. "Look for the light, even if it's just a sliver under a door." She had said it before every mission, and she'd whispered it into Leah's ear the last time she held her. "You'll do great," he said. Leah reached into her bag and handed him something. The dog tag. "No," he said gently, curling her fingers around it. "That one's yours now." She didn't cry. She didn't break. She just held the chain to her chest as the agent escorted her down the ramp, one hand waving back until the terminal swallowed her completely. Halden stood still for a beat longer, watching the closing gate. He didn't turn until the crowd behind him began to disperse, the silence fraying into scattered footsteps and uncertain glances. No one made eye contact. Not really. The ones who had laughed tried to look busy. The ones who had filmed tried not to seem guilty. But one person stood where she had all along. An older woman, maybe mid-60s, dressed in a muted blue blazer and holding a leather-bound notebook. She hadn't recorded anything. She hadn't laughed, and she hadn't looked away when the general saluted. She stepped forward slowly. "I saw what they did to you," she said softly. "It was shameful." Halden didn't reply. She hesitated, then added, "My husband served. Marines. Passed last spring." His eyes flicked toward her, softer now. "I'm sorry," she nodded, clutching the notebook tighter. "You carried yourself the same way he did, quiet until it mattered." There was a pause. Then she offered her hand. "Margot Vellin, Marcus's mother." Halden blinked. She gave a sad smile. "He wasn't raised to act like that. I don't know what happened to him in that uniform, but I wanted to say I'm sorry on his behalf." Halden studied her. The posture was proud, not performative. The apology wasn't rehearsed. And the surname, Vellin, confirmed something that twisted the moment into something more human. He took her hand. "You don't owe me that, but I appreciate it." "I watched that little girl of yours," she said, glancing toward the ramp. "She's got her mother's courage, doesn't she?" That stopped him. His face tightened just slightly. "You knew Ava." "I was a trauma nurse at Ridgeway Base years ago. Ava was the kind of medic who stayed after shift just to hold hands." Halden exhaled. Small world. And smaller still was the realization that even here, even now, his wife's impact lingered in ways he hadn't expected. Margot tucked the notebook under her arm. "Tell her one of Ava's patients remembers." He nodded. Then she stepped away, leaving him once again alone. Almost. From the edge of the checkpoint, Marcus Vellin watched. Not with the same cocky stance as before. His arms weren't crossed. His jaw wasn't tight. He looked like someone watching a tide he couldn't stop. Halden didn't go to him. He didn't need to. But when Vellin finally stepped forward, it wasn't with hostility. It was with hesitance and regret. "Look," he started, voice low. "I didn't know." Halden's eyes didn't harden. They didn't soften either. "You didn't ask," he said. Vellin winced. "I was doing my job," he offered. "No," Halden replied. "You were playing gatekeeper." Vellin looked down. "Look, I've got a kid too. She's 7. If someone talked to her like I talked to yours..." Halden didn't let him finish. "Don't need you to apologize to me." Vellin nodded, hopeful. "You owe her." The words landed harder than anything Halden could have said about service, respect, or uniform. Vellin swallowed. "I'll make sure she never misses that flight again." Halden gave him a long look. "See that you do." Then he turned away, not with anger, but with purpose. Because the real weight of the moment wasn't in proving who he was. It was in showing who he still chose to be. Halden didn't look back again. Not at the gate, not at Vellin, not even at the curious bystanders pretending they hadn't watched a man get stripped of his dignity and then handed it back by a 4-star general. He made his way toward the quietest edge of the terminal, the maintenance access corridor that circled behind the public lounges. It wasn't marked for passengers, but shuttle staff knew the shortcuts. He needed space. not to calm down, but to process. His boots echoed against the service tunnel floor, steady, unhurried. The farther he walked from the checkpoint, the more the world shrank back to its usual rhythm. Pipes overhead hummed. The air carried the faint scent of machine oil and disinfectant. At a quiet junction, he stopped near a service bench, pulled out his badge, and sat down. He exhaled. A small tremor rippled through his left hand, barely visible. Old injury. Shrapnel from the containment breach back at Jurien Ridge. Most people assumed it was a nervous tic. It wasn't. It was just the body remembering what it had survived. He unzipped the pocket of his work bag and pulled out a worn piece of cloth, a torn scrap from his original flight jacket. Ava had stitched it into Leah's baby blanket years ago. He kept it with him now. Just fabric, but like most things that mattered, its weight wasn't physical. The echo of approaching footsteps made him pocket it again. A voice followed. "You left fast." It was Rice. Halden didn't stand. "Didn't want to steal." "Your spotlight." Rice gave a quiet chuckle and leaned against the opposite wall. "Hell of a thing, seeing you in that line. Took me half a second to recognize you. Then it all came back." Halden didn't respond right away. He let the silence settle, see if the general actually had something to say or was just passing through. Rice folded his arms. "You ever think about coming back?" "To what?" Halden asked. "Uniform, chain of command, paper salutes, and political clearance fights?" Rice smirked. "Didn't think so." They sat with that. "You handled yourself well," Rice added. "Could have chewed that agent out 6 different ways. Instead, you stood still and let him show who he was." Halden looked up. "I wasn't trying to prove anything." "That's exactly why it worked." Rice took something from his pocket and tossed it across. Halden caught it reflexively. A data chip. "What's this?" "An unclassified pull from DHS Biometric Registry. That scanner flagged you because of the alloy index in your hip. They've never seen it in a civilian before. Thought it was contraband tech." Halden turned the chip over between his fingers. "They ran it up the chain," Rice continued. "Didn't find your name, of course. Your file's still sealed tighter than Langley's vaults. But someone up there asked me if I could confirm who it was. You made an impression, even encrypted. I didn't mean to cause trouble. You didn't. You reminded the right people why we trusted you with black class missions." Halden placed the chip in his bag and zipped it shut. "My daughter doesn't need a father with flags on his shoulder. She needs someone who doesn't flinch when the line gets ugly." Rice nodded. "And you gave her that today." There was a beat. "By the way," Rice added, "you've got TSA supervisors sending apology memos to Homeland. Velen's name's not looking great right now." "Not my problem," Halden said flatly. "Agreed," Rice said. "Still poetic, though." He pushed off the wall and took a few steps before pausing. "Halden." "Yeah?" "I meant what I said, Jurien Ridge. We never forget who held that line. And today, you held another one." Halden nodded once, slowly. "Appreciate it." Rice disappeared around the corner. Halden sat a moment longer before reaching into the inner lining of his bag. He pulled out the maintenance report he was supposed to deliver for the day shift. Oil cycle logs, ground crew issues, brake fluid irregularities. Ordinary work, honest work. He folded it, placed it back, and then, from his bag's front pocket, he removed something else, a sealed envelope. He had written it months ago, never mailed it, addressed to Leah's future. A letter explaining who her father was, in case something ever happened, and she only had stories to go by. But now, maybe she didn't need that letter. Maybe she'd already seen enough. He tore it in half, then again, letting the pieces fall into the terminal's trash bin. Some truths didn't need to be read. They needed to be witnessed. Halden stood up from the service bench, the torn letter no longer in his hands, the old story no longer needed. He slung his bag over one shoulder and made his way toward the shuttle lot. The clatter of polished shoes, rolling luggage, and distant boarding calls faded behind him. It was over, or so he thought. He'd almost reached the staff exit when a voice called out behind him. "Mr. Bruck." He turned. It wasn't Velen. It wasn't Rice. It was the younger agent from earlier, the one who'd run the handheld scanner. Nervous, but respectful. "Sir, I'm sorry, can I speak with you for a moment?" Halden gave a measured nod. "You already did, at the checkpoint." The agent flushed. "Yes, sir. I didn't know." "That's becoming a pattern today." The young man nodded, fumbling with a tablet. "After you left, I pulled the scan logs. The system flagged you as an unidentified priority match. It had security codes I've never seen before. But the way you stood there, I should have seen it. I should have said something." Halden's gaze softened, just a little. "You didn't escalate. That's enough." The agent hesitated. "Sir, may I ask, why didn't you say anything back there? You could have ended it in 2 seconds." Halden looked him in the eye. "Because people remember how you make them feel, not how loud you shouted." The words landed. "I just thought you should know," the agent said quietly. "I've got a little brother. He always looks nervous in places like this. I saw him in your daughter." Halden gave a slow nod. "Then treat the next kid like she's yours. That's how you fix it." The agent stood straighter. "Yes, sir." He stepped back, letting Halden pass. It was a small exchange, not dramatic, not loud, but it marked the beginning of the social ripple, where quiet dignity began replacing force as the language of respect. Outside, the sun was cutting across the tarmac, casting long shadows over the transport lanes. Halden reached the shuttle garage, beeped in with his worn badge, and walked to his assigned vehicle. Bus number 43, engine a little sticky on cold starts. Rear latch needed a shove. He climbed in and sat behind the wheel. Not to drive, but to breathe. It was quieter here. The smell of oil and vinyl seats grounded him in a way even Rice's salute hadn't. His radio crackled. "Dispatch to 43. You still active?" Halden picked it up. "Standing by." "Can you do a courtesy run from Concourse E? Security's got an officer needing shuttle service to the parking deck. Special request." Halden hesitated. "Name?" he asked. "Didn't say, just said, quote, 'He'll know who I am.'" Sounded real polite, though. He sighed and keyed the ignition. 10-4, on my way." As the shuttle rolled forward, Halden let the engine's rhythm settle his mind. He had returned to the role he chose, not because he had to, but because it gave him something the military never quite could: peace without performance. When he pulled up to Concourse E, the doors hissed open, and standing there, briefcase in one hand and hat in the other, was Margot Velen. "Didn't expect to see you again," Halden said. She stepped in with surprising ease. "Didn't expect my son to send me home in a shuttle either, but apparently I'm VIP now." She gave a sly smile. "Your doing, I suspect." He didn't deny it. As the shuttle pulled away, she sat behind him, hands folded, gaze fixed ahead. My son's not a bad man, she said, but somewhere between ambition and authority, he stopped remembering what we taught him. Halden said nothing. He came to me afterward, she continued, told me everything, asked if I thought he'd ruined his career. Did you? She looked out the window. No, but I told him it'd be a waste if he didn't learn from you. A long pause settled in the space between them. Then she leaned forward. My husband, before he passed, used to tell our son, respect is the quietest thing you'll ever hear. I think he forgot that. Halden gripped the wheel tighter. A lot of people have, she smiled. But not you, and not Leah. They pulled into the parking deck. She gathered her things, paused at the door. Thank you for protecting her and for not returning hate with pride. He nodded. Drive safe. I don't drive anymore, she said, but I watch who does. The doors hissed closed, and the shuttle pulled away into the light. The shuttle turned the last corner of the parking deck and eased back into its bay. Halden shut off the engine, leaned into the silence, and let the final vibrations of the day settle in his bones. For the first time in hours, there were no scanners, no commands, no eyes on him, just the hum of cooling metal and the distant ping of elevator doors. His hand drifted to the front pocket of his bag, where Leah's dog tag had once rested, now gone, with her, as it should be. He didn't need to carry the weight anymore. He stepped out of the shuttle and locked it behind him. The wind outside had picked up, whistling faintly through the steel railings of the staff walkway. The sky was streaked with pink and gold, a quiet ending for a day that had tested everything. Then his phone buzzed. One new message, unknown secure. He tapped it. Colonel Brock, this is DHS oversight, requesting a scheduled contact. Debrief protocol reactivated. Non-disciplinary. Clearance. Shadow Trace 7. Respond Y/N. Halden stared at the message, jaw tightening. They weren't summoning him back. Not officially. But they were poking the past, brushing dust off records that had been sealed for over a decade. Someone at a higher level had taken notice after today's scanner flag. And once a name like his resurfaced, someone always came knocking. He didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, he walked toward the break room near the lot's rear. More storage closet than lounge, but it had coffee and silence, and right now that was enough. Inside, he poured half a cup and sat on the back bench. That's when he heard the knock. Not on the door, but on the glass panel beside it. Velen. Halden watched him through the pain. No uniform now, civilian jacket, shoulders squared tighter than before. Not defensive, disciplined. He opened the door. Didn't expect to see you again, Halden said. Velen stepped inside slowly, clutching something under his arm. Didn't expect to come back, but I needed to. Halden gestured to the other bench. Velen sat without speaking for a moment. Then he placed the object on the table between them. It was a framed certificate, slightly dusty, the kind you keep in drawers or boxes. Across the center, Ava Brock, Distinguished Service Commendation, Ridgeway Medical Evacuation Corps. Halden froze. I found it, Velen said. In the old records archive. My mom kept it from her nursing days. Said Ava was the one who convinced her not to quit after a bombing run left the ER short-handed. She said Ava walked into triage like she was made of iron and light. Halden swallowed hard. She never mentioned that, he said. She wouldn't have, Velen replied. My mom says the real ones never do. He pushed the frame closer. I wanted to return it to Leah, if that's okay. Halden nodded slowly. It is. Another pause stretched between them. I was arrogant, Velen said. But it wasn't just that. I built my whole sense of control around the uniform, around the badge, the clearance. I forgot that some people gave up more than I've ever earned just to keep those systems running. You forgot the difference between position and authority, Halden said quietly. Velen nodded. I did, and I can't undo what I did at that checkpoint, but I can make sure it doesn't happen again. Halden raised an eyebrow. To me? To anyone, Velen said. He reached into his coat and pulled out a file. I've already submitted a procedural reform to HQ, new training on biometric scan interpretation and how to handle non-standard alerts. It won't change the world, but it'll change how people like me treat people like you. Halden accepted the file, flipped through it, well-structured, clean. You're turning your mistake into something useful, he said. Trying. They sat in silence again. You know, Velen said, my daughter asked me tonight why I looked sad. I told her I forgot how to see people clearly. Halden nodded. Then teach her to look harder. That's your second chance. Velen stood. I will. He picked up the certificate and handed it over. Tell Leah this came from a nurse who never forgot her mom. Halden accepted it with both hands. Velen turned toward the door, paused. Also, he said, without facing back, that general who saluted you, he put in a formal commendation. They're unsealing part of your record, the part they think people should remember. Then he left. Halden sat there alone with the certificate, fingers brushing Ava's name. He didn't cry. He just closed his eyes and let memory do what it does best, fill the space where silence lives. Halden stood in the break room long after Velen left, eyes fixed on the certificate in his hands. Ava's name, printed in faded ink, stared back at him. Less a memory now, more a message. Still here, still guiding. He slid it carefully into his bag, between the shift log and his spare uniform shirt. He'd give it to Leah when she got back. Maybe they'd frame it together. His phone buzzed again. Reminder. Secure contact pending. Response required. He stared at it. All day, people had tried to put him into boxes. Worker, trespasser, forgotten. The only label that had ever fit was the one Leah gave him every morning before school. Dad. He set the phone down and left it on the break room table. Outside, the sky was now bruised purple, the last light fading across the lot. Halden stepped into the breeze, each step toward the shuttle bay lighter than the one before. That night, he didn't dream of battlefields. He dreamed of Leah's face when she saw the frame. The next morning started like any other, until it didn't. He arrived for his early shift to find the garage buzzing with whispers. Drivers clustered near dispatch, eyes wide, voices hushed. Halden parked and approached slowly. "You hear about Velen?" one of the drivers asked. "Whole rotation pulled into a meeting. That guy might actually get replaced." "Don't think he's getting fired," someone else said. But something big happened upstairs. Halden didn't weigh in. He just nodded and clocked in like normal. But the hum in the air said it wasn't over yet. Something was shifting. 30 minutes into his first run, dispatch crackled through. "Unit 43, come in." He picked up the mic. "Go ahead." "Change of assignment. Passenger pickup at Terminal B, not a traveler. Internal." "Copy. Details?" "Name's on file. You'll know her when you see her." He frowned, but adjusted course and headed toward Terminal B. When he pulled up, Margot Velen was waiting at the curb. This time, no notebook, no sharp smile, just a single envelope in her hands and a look Halden hadn't seen before, determined but heavy. She stepped aboard. "I'm not going far," she said. "Just needed 5 minutes." Halden nodded, pulling out of the loop. She held up the envelope. "I need you to read this. Now. I'll wait." He glanced down. The seal bore a formal insignia, Federal Internal Affairs Review Board. Halden opened it. Inside, a letterhead, a disciplinary citation, and a transcript of a testimonial. Marcus Vellens. It wasn't about Halden. It was about himself. He had submitted a full confession. His abuse of procedural authority, the profiling, the public humiliation of a non-resisting civilian. He admitted to choosing ego over protocol. He requested internal review, not as punishment, but as accountability. And at the bottom, a handwritten postscript. To restore faith in the uniform, someone has to start with the truth. Let it be me. Halden read it twice. When he looked up, Margot was watching him carefully. "He gave it to me," she said. "Said if he handed it to you himself, it would feel like asking for forgiveness. But if I brought it, it might feel like closure." Halden was quiet. "I raised him better," she said. "And now, maybe he's raising himself better." They drove in silence a moment longer before she reached into her coat. "There's one more thing." She handed over a folded security badge, same clearance level as before, but recoded. "It's yours, temporary, renewable, approved by DHS oversight." Halden narrowed his eyes. "Why?" "Because some systems still work, and when they realize someone slipped through the cracks who should have been in the room, they open a door." "I'm not interested in going back." "You don't have to," she said. "But if your daughter ever walks into a place where her last name gets flagged, she'll need someone who understands what those codes really mean." Halden said nothing. Margot looked at him one last time. "You're not invisible anymore, whether you wanted to be or not." He dropped her off near the staff terminal. She didn't say goodbye. She just touched the folded badge once more before stepping off the shuttle and disappearing into the flow of airport employees. Halden sat for a long while before pulling away. Later that night, after dinner, Leah climbed onto the couch and opened her bag. "Dad," she said, "they gave us notebooks at camp to write what our parents do. I said you drive the shuttle." He nodded. "But I also said you used to do something secret. Is that okay?" He smiled. "That's more than okay." She hesitated. "Do you miss it? The old job?" He thought about it. "No," he said. "I missed you more." She beamed, then reached into her bag and pulled out a drawing. Her holding a shuttle steering wheel, him saluting in the background. Across the top, "My dad does everything." And beneath that, in smaller letters, "And when he doesn't, he lets others learn how." Halden folded it carefully, then hung it next to Ava's certificate. The next morning, the drawing was still pinned beside Ava's certificate, its lines uneven, its colors bright. Halden stared at it longer than he meant to. "My dad does everything," Leah had written. It wasn't pride that hit him. It was the quiet weight of trust. He hadn't done everything, but she believed he could, and maybe that mattered more. His shift started early. The air outside the shuttle lot was brisk, clean, sharpened by the mountain air that curved just beyond the runways. As he walked into dispatch, he noticed something pinned to the staff board. TSA Training Bulletin, Priority Scan Protocol. Updates, effective immediately. He stepped closer. The document was short, clear, but it carried the scent of something rare in institutional halls: accountability. A footnote at the bottom credited Marcus Vellens by name. Halden said nothing, just nodded to himself and moved on. He was halfway through his third circuit when dispatch cut through again. 43, need you at Hangar C, VIP transport, coded pickup. He frowned. Who's requesting? A pause. Didn't give a name, said you'd know when you got there. He pulled in a breath. Copy, en route. Hangar C sat at the far end of the airfield, adjacent to the private executive wings and emergency response pads. It was rarely used for passengers, mostly ops staff, military crossovers. Occasionally, someone from Homeland came through for briefings nobody talked about. He pulled up to the side gate, ID'd himself to the lone guard, and drove along the perimeter to the access bay. The door opened, and General Rice stepped out, not in full uniform this time, just a simple coat over a crisp shirt. But his presence didn't fade. Didn't expect you, Halden said, as the general boarded. You never do, Rice replied, settling in. Halden eased the shuttle forward. Where to? Restricted terminal, short ride. They drove in silence for a moment. Then Rice leaned back. You know what happens when a name gets flagged in a scanner? You tell me. It depends who notices. Some bury it, some investigate, and some, like yesterday, realize the system forgot who built it. Halden kept his eyes forward. I didn't come back to be remembered, Rice nodded. I know, but some memories refuse to stay sealed. Another beat. They're unfreezing parts of your record, Rice said. DHS wants to create a database of dormant clearance veterans, those with operational training who've gone quiet. I'm not a weapon to be stored. Rice almost smiled. Didn't say you were, but I think they're finally understanding that not all uniforms come with medals. Some come with shuttle keys and worn hands, and those hands are still shaping lives. Halden turned the shuttle onto a narrower road. So, this is a courtesy call? No, Rice said. This is about something else. He reached into his coat and handed over a slim envelope, government sealed, plain, formal. Halden didn't open it. It's not a summons, Rice said. It's an offer, one I asked them to clear, part-time advisory, off book. You'd train agents in something their systems can't teach. What's that? Restraint, grace under misfire, judging without punishing. In other words, everything you did yesterday with a 9-year-old watching. Halden said nothing, but his fingers tightened slightly on the steering wheel. They'll never say it in public, Rice added, but your example rewrote half a manual in 24 hours. Not because you fought back, but because you didn't have to. Halden pulled up to the restricted terminal. Rice stood and opened the door, but paused before stepping off. Leah's lucky, he said. She'll grow up knowing her father never needed rank to lead. Halden looked up at him. She already leads me, Rice smiled. That's how you know you did it right. He exited, leaving Halden alone with the envelope. He didn't open it right away. He didn't need to. Just holding it was enough to feel the shift in the air, one that had started with humiliation and was now carrying forward as transformation. He placed it in the console tray and started the shuttle again. As he looped back toward the public terminals, he passed through the main concourse. Families hurrying, children tugging at arms, workers navigating crowds invisible to everyone but themselves. He spotted a young janitor getting barked at by a traveler. The worker nodded, took it, didn't answer back, just kept cleaning. Halden pulled the shuttle to the side, stepped out, and crossed over. He tapped the janitor on the shoulder. Come with me. The worker blinked. Sir? Halden smiled. You've been seen. That's step one. The kid followed, unsure but curious. Halden didn't need a scanner to recognize the future. The janitor's name was Thomas, 19, soft-spoken, new to the job by 3 weeks. Halden walked him through the staff corridor behind the main terminal, not saying much at first, letting the kid settle into the silence. Eventually, Thomas broke it. Did I do something wrong? No, Halden said. You did something right. You stayed calm when someone tried to shrink you. Thomas blinked. I'm used to it. Halden stopped walking. Don't be. They reached the break room, same one where Velen had left the letter, same place Halden had torn up the one he'd written for Leah. He gestured for Thomas to sit and poured 2 cups of coffee, even though one was just hot water with a hint of bean memory. I've watched you the last few days, Halden said. You work quiet. You clear trash from corners no one looks at. You help the ground crew when they're behind. Tomas shifted uncomfortably. It's just cleaning. So was Ava's triage tent, Halden replied. So was containment protocol in a storm-damaged evac zone. Most people think power comes from position. It doesn't. It comes from how you carry what you've been given, even when no one's looking. Tomas looked down. That guy yesterday, the one with the general... Halden raised an eyebrow. Was that really you? Halden didn't answer directly. He reached into his bag and pulled out the framed certificate, the one with Ava's name. She taught me everything I needed to know about courage. Thomas studied it for a long moment. I didn't know janitors had people like that behind them, Halden smiled faintly. Everyone does. We just forget to ask. He set the frame aside. You want to do more than mop floors? He asked. I mean, eventually. Good, Halden said, because I'm teaching a seminar next month. Internal operations and people-first crisis response. They need shadows, not soldiers, observers who see patterns and act early. You in? Tomas looked stunned. Why me? Because you didn't flinch when disrespected. Because you kept working. Because you're invisible for now. And that's the best place to learn the weight of visibility. Tomas nodded slowly, the E words catching somewhere between disbelief and pride. Tell no one, Halden added, but clear your Sundays. That night, Leah returned from camp. Her eyes were bright, cheeks windburned, curls messy from airport naps. Halden scooped her into a hug before she could say a word. She melted into his chest. I missed you, she mumbled. I missed you more, he whispered. She pulled back and held up a plastic folder. I made something. He opened it carefully. Inside, drawings, photos from camp, a cardboard badge with a gold star scribbled in crayon. This one's mine, she said, pointing proudly, and this one's yours. Her drawing showed a shuttle, but not just any shuttle, his shuttle. Number 43, with tiny stick passengers smiling out the windows and a little version of Leah behind the driver's seat. Why am I in the front? She grinned. Because someday I'll drive too, but you have to teach me. I already am. Then she pulled one more thing out of the folder, a photograph from camp, group picture, kids with arms around each other. But taped to the bottom corner was a folded note. Not from her, from one of the camp counselors. It read, Your daughter spoke about you every night, not about your rank, not your job, about how you protect people by staying calm. She said you helped her find her breath when the world gets too loud. That's the kind of legacy we should all hope for. Halden read it twice. Then he folded it neatly and placed it beside Ava's certificate. He didn't need a headline. He didn't need clearance reinstated. He had this. The following morning, Leah followed him on his first shuttle run of the day, just for fun. She wore a little laminated card around her neck. Guest rider, future driver. She waved at every passenger. Some smiled. A few nodded with recognition. As Halden pulled the shuttle to Terminal A, something caught his eye. Velen, not in uniform, but present, standing near a different checkpoint, watching quietly. As Halden opened the doors for a family with small kids, he saw Velen do something unexpected. He stepped toward the overwhelmed mom, helped her with the stroller, and held the line as her toddler screamed through the metal detector. Not with force, with patience. The same patience he'd once withheld. Halden nodded once to himself and pulled away. Back in the shuttle, Leah looked up. "Was that the guy who yelled at us?" "Yes," Halden said. "Why is he helping now?" "Because sometimes," he said, "the people who got it wrong get a chance to get it right." She smiled and went back to drawing. Leah hummed softly in the front passenger seat, legs swinging as Halden guided the shuttle along the inner terminal loop. She had a clipboard now, her logbook, where she'd been drawing boxes and writing down pretend times for pretend stops. Halden glanced at her with a quiet smile. She took everything seriously when she was near him, as if being close made her braver. They pulled up to gate H12, and as the passengers stepped out, one of them paused before exiting. A tall man in a long black coat. "Sir," he said, his voice clipped but respectful. "You're Halden Brock?" Halden tensed slightly. "Depends on who's asking." The man handed over a white envelope with a seal from the Office of Civilian Recognition. "No summons, just an invitation. Formal event, 3 nights from now. My director insisted." Halden didn't take the envelope right away. "What for?" "Terminal 7 Staff Auditorium, internal honor ceremony. They're recognizing unsung contributions to airport integrity and safety." Leah leaned forward. "Dad, are you getting an award?" Halden finally accepted the envelope, but he didn't open it. "I don't do speeches." The man smiled faintly. "We don't need your words, just your presence. That's what changed things." He stepped off the shuttle. Leah beamed. "You are famous." "Not the kind that matters," Halden said gently, "and not because of what happened. It's what didn't." Later that night, after dinner, Halden found himself staring at the envelope again. He hadn't been on any stage since his last overseas debriefing. Even then, it had been behind closed doors, no cameras, no applause. Just facts, outcomes, casualty counts. This was different. He placed the envelope next to Leah's camp drawing and Ava's certificate. A kind of quiet shrine, 3 pieces of paper that told the story of who he used to be, who he became, and who he was still trying to raise. He didn't make a decision that night, but the next morning, he buttoned his collar a little higher and packed an extra pen, just in case. The ceremony hall inside Terminal 7 was nothing glamorous. Linoleum floor, stackable chairs, an old podium with a crooked microphone. But the air felt heavier than its space. Airport staff filled the back, rows, janitors, ground crew, security agents, dispatchers, flight line techs, even a few pilots in full uniform. And on the side wall, a single screen cycled silently through still photos. Moments caught on cell phones, security cams, or official lenses. One showed Halden standing in front of Leah, shielding her during the confrontation. Another, General Rice mid-salute, tension crackling across the terminal. Another, still, Velen, blurred in the background, mouth open, caught mid-realization. When Halden arrived with Leah at his side, the room quieted slightly, not out of formality, but awareness. People knew now. He didn't smile, didn't wave, just nodded once to the room and took a seat near the rear. The ceremony began. A few honorees were called up. Maintenance leads, emergency responders, a young woman from customs who had de-escalated a panic situation with nothing but calm words and a bottle of water. Then a speaker stepped up. Older man, DHS liaison. He cleared his throat. We reserve these acknowledgments for those who make a place safer without asking to be seen. The ones who act not for glory, but because they know silence is heavier when someone else is holding it alone. Then he looked at Halden. Today we recognize Halden Brook, not for a past rank or hidden service record, but for protecting what mattered in a place where status often overshadows humanity. Halden didn't move at first. Leah nudged his arm. He stood slowly. The walk to the front was short, but it felt longer under the weight of every person now really seeing him. Not just the uniform, or the lack of one, but the man. At the podium, the liaison handed him a plaque. Minimalist. A single line etched beneath the date, because he didn't need to speak to be heard. The room rose to its feet. No one asked for a speech, and Halden didn't offer one. But as he turned, his eyes met Velen's, standing near the wall, not in uniform, but present. He nodded. Halden returned it. Outside the terminal, Leah bounced beside him. Did you see everyone stand? I saw you smile, he said. That's better, she grinned. I told my camp counselor you were brave, but she didn't believe you'd ever be famous. I'm not, he said. I'm known. That's different. As they reached the parking deck, he spotted Thomas, standing near a pillar, nodding as if waiting for a signal. Halden gave him a subtle wave. I'm teaching someone next week, he told Leah. Someone who's learning to see without judgment. She took his hand. Like you taught me? No, he said. Like you taught me. Halden and Leah reached the car just as the first rain began to tap across the windshield. Quiet, rhythmic, unhurried. He unlocked the passenger door, and Leah hopped in with her usual energy, swinging her legs and dropping her backpack onto the floor like it weighed 100 pounds. He started the engine, but didn't. Drive. Not yet. Something about the way she looked at him in the rear view, half reflection, half real, made him pause. You okay? She asked. He nodded. Just thinking. About the speech you didn't give. He smirked. That one? You should have said something cool, she grinned. Like, I'm just a driver, but today I drove the truth home. Halden laughed, full and honest. Where do you come up with this stuff? I have your genes, she said proudly. He shifted the car into drive and turned out of the deck. The terminal lights faded behind them, replaced by the faint hum of a city waking into night. They didn't talk for a while, just listened to the wipers dance across the windshield. Then Leah broke the silence. Dad, when that guy yelled at us and the scanner went off, were you scared? He thought about it. No, he said, but I was sad. Why? Because I knew how many people were watching, and how fast people choose sides when they don't know the story. She nodded slowly, chewing on that. But they saw it, right? She asked. The general, the people, they saw you. Eventually, he said, but that wasn't the point. You don't do the right thing because people see it. You do it so that when they finally do, you're still standing in the same place. Leah smiled. Is that why you never shouted back? He glanced at her. I didn't need to. The truth was already loud enough. Back home, Halden took off his boots, set his bag down, and walked into the den. Leah followed with a pencil and fresh notebook. Her legacy log, she called it. New rule, she said. Every week we write down something we didn't say, but wanted to, and why it was better we didn't. That's a complicated rule, Halden said. That's why it's important. She climbed up onto the couch and began scribbling. Halden stood in front of the wall where 3 things now hung side by side: Ava's military commendation, Leah's drawing of shuttle number 43, and a framed copy of the quote from the ceremony plaque. Because he didn't need to speak to be heard, but it was the space beneath those that mattered most. The bench where Leah often curled up with her books, the one Ava had refinished before deployment, the one Halden had nearly given away during their worst year. He sat down, leaned back, and listened to the soft scratching of pencil on paper behind him. Do you think people change? Leah asked. Most try, he said. Few succeed. The brave ones admit when they're wrong and start again. Like that guy? Yeah, like that guy. She looked up. Would you ever work with him? Halden considered it. I already am, he said. Every time I let someone walk past me without reminding them who I used to be, and they choose to treat me right anyway. Leah nodded deeply, as if storing the line for later. Then she grinned. I'm gonna be just like you. Halden raised an eyebrow. What happened to driving faster than me? I can do both, he smiled. You already are. The next morning, Halden returned to the shuttle lot, uniform clean, posture relaxed. Tomas waited at the gate with 2 coffees and a beat-up notebook of his own. You ready? Halden asked. Tomas nodded. Still nervous. Good, that means you care. They walked toward the training room. Along the way, Halden noticed something on the staff board, a new poster. Respect is the quietest thing you'll ever hear. Listen harder. Below it, a row of signatures had started forming. Ground crew, TSA, maintenance, janitorial staff. People who had once been invisible. Now they were all listening. And for once, the silence wasn't empty. It was earned. What do you think the next story should be? Subscribe and don't miss our next story. They laughed. When the single dad sat in first class. Then the pilot thanked him over the intercom. Trust me, you'll feel it. And tell me in the comments, what injustice should we tackle next?